Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Jamie University. It is Wednesday, March 15th. We are 1 week away from the start of spring football, Jamie. I got to tell you, I was driving around, dropping my kids off this morning, Jamie, and I got like a rush of excitement that we're about to talk about the football team. And it occurred to me that I don't like talking about coaching changes. I thought I did.
Yeah.
I thought it was great for content and all those other things. But the fact of the matter is, I don't like it. It's not fun. It doesn't get my juices flowing. You know what gets my juices flowing, Jamie? Talking about what the spring means for Kenny Minchie. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about spring ball. We're going to talk about the offense. We'll do the defense tomorrow on our normal day. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And if you like what you see, it's their first time in the show, hit the like, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell. So a lot of people send comments in the chat and all those other things. Algorithm gods, they all know. And if you're an audio person, you don't like the visual stuff, hit us up on our podcast feed. I've put links in the description below, so you can check that out as well. Jamie, before we get started, I saw something yesterday that was very disturbing. Dan Orlovsky tweeted that he takes 30 showers before he changes out of the bath tiles, Jamie. And if cancel culture was a real thing, Jamie, would he be allowed to enter into society? I would say no. So that tells me the cancel culture isn't exactly real. Because what is that? 30 showers. 30 showers, Jamie. Unbelievable.
It's disgusting. Have fun using your bacteria soaked towel to dry yourself off. 30 showers, that's like a month.
That's insane. I mean, maybe he loves showers, right?
Maybe
he takes two a day. But
it's actually even worse if it's multiple times a day, because then it's probably not even getting dry. It's pretty gross. I saw it because I saw it was hilarious, because Rachel Bonetta, who works for the NFL Network as well, who's also a very funny follow if you enjoy it, she's also Canadian. She was like what, and was at FBI and whatever, reporting it. It is disgusting. It is disgusting. I don't understand that too. I don't get it. I don't understand why that would. Yeah, you know what? And Joe Bro brings up his wife. Where's his wife in this? Is his wife just being like, no, that's cool?
Interventions, his friends, his family. I mean, at this point, it's intervention level, I think, is what it is.
He doesn't look like a guy who would have bad hygiene, but
yeah, I don't get it. He's very particular about, someone who's very particular about calories, someone who doesn't eat the whole piece of it, like a tart dessert, because they don't want the calories, isn't the type of person that should be taking 30 showers before they change out the bath towel. Change the bath towels, Dan. Come on. Derek Doss is here. Jamie.
Yeah.
What were we going to say?
I was just going to say, just apologies for everyone listening on the podcast today, because I don't have my mic. I forgot my mic at home. So I'm recording this in another different room than a usual room without my mic, using AirPods. So if you're like, man, Jamie sounds weird today. Yeah, I probably do sound a little bit weird. So just my apologies in advance.
You know what? It's my apologies, because my family got sick, and so we had to we couldn't record on a normal Tuesday. We had to do it on a Wednesday, because my family, the death virus went through the family. It wasn't COVID. It was one of the norovirus things. And if anyone's ever had that, it's not good. It's not good. So, but hopefully, we're all on the mend now, so that's good. But I was going to say, Derek Doss is here. Derek Doss saw the alert on Twitter, and that's why we put those things out on Twitter, Jamie. Not sure the alert thing. We'll have my 9-year-old show me how. Was just scrolling Twitter and saw the post. Good for you, Derek Doss. Happy to have you here. You know what you can do? Hit the subscribe button. That's right underneath. You can hit that, and you'll get an alert to your email every single time we go live, and you'll get that. And if you want to do audio podcast, there's a description below on how to subscribe to those as well. So thank you for being here.
I'm pretty sure if you have the YouTube app and you put your alerts and notifications on, you'll get the notification too. It'll go to your your phone, your Apple Watch, whatever whatever kind of device you're using.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. We're gonna talk about spring football. We're gonna do spring preview. And we'll do the quarterbacks first because that's the most important position, and it makes the most sense to do it. So 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Well, actually 5. I don't want to shortchange Ron Paulus III. Don't want to do that. Right? He's out there too. So we got Sam Hartman, we got Tyler Buchner, Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchie, and Ron Paulus III will be all on scholarship for Notre Dame for this spring practice. I
don't think Ron Paulus is on scholarship.
Not anymore.
I think he might be on academic scholarship. I don't believe he counts to the 85.
Got it.
My understanding.
Okay. Well, he'll be throwing passes, and that's what's important. Yeah. So Sam Hartman presumed starter. I know they said there's going to be a quarterback competition, Jamie. And sure, like we discussed it last show, no problem. They're all going to take reps. If Tyler Buchner is clearly better than Sam Hartman, then he will be named the starter. That is not our expectation, right? We no one expects that to happen. But in some ways, I think this is a bigger spring for Tyler Buchner than it is for Sam Hartman as quarterback for Notre Dame, and I'll go into that in a second. But Jamie, what do you think about this? What do you think about the quarterback position in for spring 2023? What are you looking for? What are some things that you want to hear and all those things?
I think the main thing for all those guys is you just want to hear they're comfortable with Jared Parker. They're comfortable with Gino Guidugli. Guidugli. Sorry, it's just there's that G in there. Like what is it? Silent G? I don't get it.
We'll work on it.
But I want to hear that they feel comfortable on within the offense, and that they're learning, they're picking things up. I think specifically for Hartman, that he feels comfortable there and that everything just is kind of hitting for him, because I know people overreact, saying oh man, he's just been lights out this spring. And it's important. I mean, I expect him to be pretty good and you're going to hear good things about him. But I mean, I will say that I don't think that, if you find out you're he wasn't or he has the spring game and it's he really didn't do much in the spring game, I don't think that matters as much. It matters more that he's getting comfortable with his receivers. He talked about kind of developing that relationship, and that's how you get those good back shoulder throws. That's how one of the reasons why him and A.T. Perry were so successful, right? Because they had this great chemistry. So I think developing a chemistry with the receivers, I think Tyler Buchner kind of feeling comfortable and in control. If I want to hear about Tyler Buchner, the kind of control we saw from him in the bowl game, that's what you want to see and hear from him. In the spring, because that to me will be a great sign.
So here's what I'm looking for from Tyler Buchner, and honestly, we're not even going to get it. So what I say we're looking for, we're not going to get this. They're not going to show us this because Notre Dame doesn't show us anything, right? So that's just part of it. But I think the thing that I want them to focus on with Tyler Buchner is this. Don't even focus on the fact that a quarterback competition. That's not it. It doesn't even matter, because you know what? Sam Hartman is a better quarterback today than Tyler Buchner is right now. And that's not, and there's no point in even pretending that you can even test these guys, because you can't. That's the thing about the spring. At quarterback, you can't have a competition because you can't test them in the ways that will show who is actually the better quarterback. You can't work in the pocket because you can't get hit. You can't run because you can't get hit. And so the whole thing is catered to the fact that it's going to emphasize every strength that Sam Hartman has. It's never he can't get on equal footing because of the running stuff.
Yeah.
Right. He can't. So don't even worry about that. Here's the other thing. If I was to set the line, Jamie, on over/under starts for Tyler Buchner in 2023, let's say I set it at 0.5. What would you take, the over or the under?
I'm probably over.
I would take the over. I would take the over. I might take the over at 1.5 because here's the thing. Things happen, and we know that because Tyler Buchner got hurt in the second game last year, and Drew Pine started 10 games, and so like things happen, right? And so to me, at some point, he is going to get the chance to show that he is a starting caliber quarterback at Notre Dame. And that's what he needs to focus on, being good enough to the point where it's like, hey, we got to get him in the game somehow. I don't care how it is. Like Marcus Freeman's got to say, look, Tyler Buchner looks great. I don't know how we're going to get him in this game, but we need to find a way to get him in the game. Like you can always, as a player, even at quarterback, you can always make them play you. And that needs to be his focus, not try to be the starter because you're just not going to beat out Sam Hartman. You won't. But like things that he has to do, you got to be a better decision maker. Like the mistakes that he made in the mistakes that he made in the games that he started, like these are bad decisions. And when I say bad decisions, I mean bad decisions in a non-aggressive way. The pick six he threw against Marshall, like that is a 5. You're trying to fit in a 5-yard stop.
Yeah,
that's not.
It wasn't a good throw.
It's not a good throw.
And ball placement, like just.
It's all bad. It's all bad. And you're not. It's not even like, oh, I'm trying to make a play here. No, you're not. It's a 5-yard stop. You need to be looking on the other side of the field. The other pick he threw in that game. You got to be looking the other side of the field. You're not even looking on the right side of the field. That's another 5-yard stop to a squatting corner. Like that's the sort of stuff. Like you can't do that stuff, right? That needs to get out of your game. Fix that stuff. Don't even worry about being a starter. Fix it and then move on. What do you think, James?
Yeah, and I think one of the things too, like if you look at say the bowl game too. So let's just say that the one pick where, I can't remember if it was the back, if he was throwing to Estime when he tried to just kind of do like the improvisational play where he just kind of.
I think it was. I want to say it was Evans, but I might be wrong. Or no, it was Jaden Thomas. Jaden Thomas.
Okay, it was Jaden Thomas. Yeah, it was Jaden Thomas. I thought it was the back, but it was Jaden Thomas. And that, not that you want any of those plays to happen.
Yeah.
But like you can live with it. You can live with that kind of play. And even the pick that was thrown at the end of the game, I blame that on the call more than him. Yes, should he eat it and throw it away and realize that hey, they didn't bite. This is not the wrong look. Yeah, for sure. But and kind of throw it blindly. But I think I'd blame it on the call more than him. That's the kind of thing. But yeah, like you said, those are just easy mistakes. I think a lot of the Sam Hartman picks were him trying to probably make a play when he shouldn't, make a play when he shouldn't. And those plays, I think, some of that you don't want to take that mentality away from him, but rein it back just a little bit. And I think that's the main thing, but also here's the other thing. It's spring ball. This is the time to make those mistakes. And this is the time when you can throw 3 picks in a practice and who cares? Because it's spring ball. That's the whole point. And it's like the whole thing with, not to rub it in, Greg, but remember Kyle Hamilton getting roasted by the one undrafted free agent receiver. That's the big thing. Guess what? That's camp.
Doesn't matter.
That's how it works, right? That stuff like that happens, right? It doesn't mean, it really doesn't mean that much in the long run, right? It just, you make the mistakes now so you don't make it when you get to Saturdays in the fall, right? And you just don't want to see, those same kind of mistakes where it's this was just like a poor job, a bad decision. Just a bad decision that it was you should have never made this throw. You should have never put it in this spot. That's what you don't want.
Yeah. And EK says whether it's this year or next, Tyler running 10 plus times per game is not smart play calling. He needs to spend this year throwing when he gets in the game. I think for me that the reason that you run so many design runs for him is because you're not totally confident with the passing piece. Sam Hartman could run more than he does, but they don't do that because we'll just have him throw because that's what he's good at, right? He's not a bad athlete. It's just that we're just gonna have him throw it because he's a good thrower, right? So we trust him. 3rd and 3, let's throw it. Yeah, he'll find the right guy. Like he'll put it on him. We'll move the chains, right? With Tyler Buchner, it's like, well, maybe we could roll him out a little bit, or maybe we could get him on the move a little bit, a little quarterback draw, right? Something like that. And so that's the difference between them. It's like that's how you get into. It's like Brandon Wimbush, same thing. I don't want to throw on 3rd and 3. Let's run it. Let's run some kind of way. And Jamie, you brought up a good point there that I want to transition to the young guys too, Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchie, about taking chances in the spring. Those guys, Marcus Freeman talks a ton about ball security and all those things, right? I think with those two in the spring, don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about ball security. I don't want to hear because here's why. For those guys, you need to show me like, hey, you can make the throws. You can make the throws we need you to make to be a big time player. We can rein you back. I would rather try to rein you back than push you forward because that's what Notre Dame needs to be great at the quarterback level, right? You need to be able to make the plays. You need to be able to make the throws. You need to be able to challenge defenses. If your whole thing from your freshman year onto when you become the starter is protect the ball, protect the ball, protect the ball, then that just breeds a mindset of like carefulness and not taking chances and not knowing what you're actually capable of as a quarterback, that by the time they get, and I think that's been a problem with their development as well, by the way, just across the board. Focus on safety with the ball has led to safe quarterback play in their mindset for too long. And by the time these guys get to the top level, it's like, well, I don't want to turn over. I don't want to turn over. It's like, you got to get that out of your system, as a young guy, and then you rein it back, and then you get experience, and then you say, okay, this is what I can do. This is what I can't do. So that's what I think those guys need to focus on going into the spring. I'm curious about your thoughts on what I just said.
I think this is another reason why too. Like, I think people think one-on-ones, and you always think it's like, yeah, it's about competition and certainly like, receivers versus DBs and that's what you're thinking of winning on a route and winning in the catch point and all that stuff. But here's the thing: the quarterback throws it every time. It's not something like, oh, the guy's covered, I'm not going to throw it. You just throw it. Like, you throw it even if the guy's covered, even if you wouldn't throw it during a game. The reason why that is important is because you throw it and the guy's not open, and then maybe you're forced to kind of throw him open. And that is like, maybe that's the back shoulder, maybe that's ball placement, like putting it over the top, maybe it's, put it on his back hip, whatever, right? Like all these different things that you have to do. And then you gain confidence in the receivers that this guy can make that play. And I think that was probably the biggest thing why you're like, everyone always said, Ian Book, he's so conservative with the football, right? Like, this guy won't push it down the field. He won't do it. Well, go back to 2019 and look at how many times he pushed it down the field when he had Chase Claypool. Yeah. And when he was like, oh, I'm Chase is 101, I'm throwing it. Like, and he wasn't always like, he wasn't wide open on all of those things. I know the guy was huge and he ran a 4.4, whatever, but like, he wasn't. He just threw it because it's like, he's going to win, right? And if you can go back, it's not just like in our heads. Like, that's like, you can look at the numbers. They threw deep at a higher percentage last year, higher total number of times. They pushed the ball downfield way more. And it was because he had confidence in his receivers. He had confidence in throwing it to Cole Kmet down the seam. He had confidence in throwing it to Claypool down the sidelines, whatever. And that's why you need Caleb Smith, Deion Colsey, Tobias Merriweather, et cetera. You need these guys to win, and you need them to gain that confidence, and you need to gain the confidence in them, right? Like, the quarterbacks need to gain the confidence in them. And then that's when all of a sudden Marcus Freeman, Jared Parker, whoever, Gaduli, whatever, they're not going to hate on a guy for making a decision because they're like, yeah, of course you're going to throw it up to Tobias there. You know he can make that play, right? Like that, and that's kind of what spring ball is supposed to be about, right? Is gaining that confidence.
Right. And I wasn't going to do them till later, but let's transition to the wide receivers too, because you just made a point that I think kind of blends into the wide receivers, is in that when like the coaches say, oh, of course you're going to take a shot to Tobias there, or of course you're going to take a shot to Jaden Thomas or Caleb Smith or whoever. It's that the receivers also, their version of what is open is different now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like before, it's like if the guy's kind of on my hip a little bit and they're not throwing it, like I know they're not throwing it, right? And you get it out of your mind, you run the route different. Now it's like, hey, if I have even a half a step, or even if I know the matchup that I'm getting, I know he's going to take a shot with me. That is in your mind pre-play. So then you know, like, okay, they're going to take a shot to me, and we've practiced this for months now that we've been going over, like, okay, they're going to go to me in this situation because I know that I have a seam on the sideline or a seam up the field, and I know the safety's doing this. He's coming to me, and I know it, and I need to be ready to catch it. And we've seen Jaden Thomas last year. We saw him make contested catches. We've seen Deion Colsey make contested catches. We've seen Caleb Smith at Virginia Tech make contested catches. Tobias Merriweather is 6'4", 200, runs like a deer. We know he can make contested catches. So like that's when the entire attitude of the room just changes, and that's when people make the leap. It's just like the thing with Samardzija and Stovall, in 2005, and I've referenced it before. But when you have just a change in the system and the way you go about playing offense and the way you go about looking at offense and how the passing game kind of is viewed by the program, it clicks something different for everyone, not just the quarterbacks, but the receivers too. And just the running backs and everyone, like tight ends, everyone involved just kind of clicks in their mind. Like, hey, what used to be conventional wisdom with how we were going to move the ball, it's not conventional wisdom anymore. We view ourselves in a different kind of way. And I think that makes a big difference. And you've brought up on previous shows before about one-on-ones and how this year they're going to be they're actually they're going to get to do them because they have A, the receivers, and B, they have the corners, right? And they're just going to be super competitive, right? And so just looking at the wide receivers, you've talked about Tobias Merriweather. On a previous show, we had a hot take where you said he was going to blow up this year, kind of like Equanimeous St. Brown, something like Will Fuller in his redshirt freshman year, or not his redshirt freshman year, but his second year as a sophomore in 2014. I don't want to hype him too much, but I think we know. I don't say we know, but I've heard enough about the type of player that he is in terms of his mindset and how much he wants it. It's just hard for me to believe that he won't have a great season next year, just based on opportunity and the type of quarterback that he has. Huge spring for him, Jamie. What do you think about him and just everyone, the prospects of everybody else?
Well, and Brandon Joseph hyped him up at the NFL Combine too. Said that he thinks that he has a chance to be a number one wide receiver for Notre Dame. So there's that as well. I think he has a chance to have a huge spring, and I think it's one of those things where, it's about those opportunities, and it's about. And it doesn't really matter if Sam Hartman is the guy throwing to him in those situations, because he might not come out as a starter at the beginning of spring, right? And maybe he might not be the starter by the end of the spring, right? It just depends on what they're going to do. But it's about making the most of your opportunities with wherever, and that's why it's almost like good. That's why I like. First of all, I'm even though you didn't talk about him because I don't think he's really going to be in the mix, but Steve Angeli is going to be an interesting guy because I think he's a guy who has a confidence in himself, who's like, if he knows that he's in team or whatever, they're an 11-11 or 7-on-7, whatever, and it's a chance to the call is going to be to take a deep shot to Tobias Merriweather. He's going to take that shot. he's going to just throw it because he has that kind of confidence in himself. And that's where, you can kind of build it with a guy like Tobias as well. Yeah, I think there's the receiver position. I think it was a good, obviously it's great to have Michael Mayer. He is a stud, possibly the greatest receiving tight end in Notre Dame history by the numbers he is, right?
Yeah.
And just a phenomenal player. But when he's that guy who's like always that security blanket and like you kind of know you can always count on him, well, it's good and it's bad because there's limitations to that too, right? You're not going to do the same things you do with him that you would do with a Tobias Merriweather, that you would with a Jaden Greathouse even, right? Or any of these other guys, Lorenzo Styles, whatever. So you have to be able to build on that. And I think who knows too, like Mitchell Evans could end up being the talk of spring by the end of this too. But I definitely think that not having him, and even if there was a player like that back, that's why I think it's almost good when people are like, you haven't hearing about like Michael Mayer this spring. It's like, I'm always like, if you have a guy who has a known quantity, it's not like he's not going to put in work and get better and all that too. But it's about building up the other guys and then letting them shine, because those are the guys who you're going to need later on, because you know what you're going to get from Mayer. You know what you're going to get from that. And really now with Notre Dame, they kind of know what they're going to get from some of the guys like a Jaden Thomas, but you don't know where Jaden Thomas's ceiling is. So that's what this is kind of like, we're testing the ceiling and everyone's kind of like kidding. And it's like, well, can he go here? Can he go here? Can he go here? And that's where you just want to keep pushing and pushing.
Yeah, and first of all, Patrick Quinlan said my mic has some feedback. I tried to fix it now. Let me know if that got a little bit better there. I might have some dirt in the little port there, but we don't. Yeah, just like to your point, we don't know what the ceiling is actually for a lot of these guys, because you're limited by who you have playing quarterback for you, and the type of offense that then you run because of that. Right? Because the limitations, let's just say the limitations for Pine, right? They're not just physical in that, they're not just physical limitations in that, how he can actually make the passes or what there are limitations in that Reese knows, hey, I can't call this. Like, I can't call these plays. I can't run this type of, we can't run 10 personnel, right? We can't do that. We just, it's not in our game. Can't run 4 verts all the time. We can't, there's a lot of things you're just not going to do because of his inability to push the ball down the field, right? Like, that's just a fact. And so you don't truly know what any of these guys' ceilings are, right? And I think that we talk a lot about Tobias Merriweather, I think for good reason, right? Because he has potential that's different from, I think, anyone else on the roster, with the exception of maybe Braylon James. But I think even him, I just think his potential out of anyone, like if there's a first round pick at receiver on the roster right now, it's Tobias Merriweather. I'm not saying he's going to be, right? I'm just saying if anyone has that potential, it's him. And but that being said, we don't know about Jaden Thomas. Like, we don't know how he's approaching, because he's a quiet guy. He doesn't get a lot of fanfare. We don't know how he's approaching. We don't know how he views himself, right? Same thing with Deion Colsey, and someone who hasn't been brought up by me yet. And I was distracted for a second, so maybe you brought him up. But Lorenzo Styles, that's another one where it's like, you have a guy who we all thought, what we talked about him last year, the way we're talking about Tobias Merriweather now, and we have more evidence on Lorenzo Styles, right?
Yeah, his game he had against Oklahoma State was better than anything that Tobias Merriweather did the entire season.
Yeah,
just that one game.
So, what do you think was going on with Lorenzo Styles last year?
I think it's just mental. When you start dropping passes and you don't have confidence that you're gonna, it gets you, right? And you look at Jamar Chase in the NFL. One of the things when he first came into the league, Yeah, people know him now. They're like, yeah, this guy, of course, this guy was, are you kidding? He was a top whatever pick. He was a stud. He's one of these guys who was going to be a superstar, working with Joe Burrow. But I mean, at the beginning of his career, like, people were talking about drops with him. Like, man, this guy hasn't played football in a long time. He's dropping the football a ton, all this. And that was the thing. And then he got over it. And then all of a sudden you're like, it's talking about what a fantastic receiver Jamar Chase is, right? So I think it's confidence, and it's him trusting himself. And then, the coaches giving more trust in him too. But once he kind of proves it, but he has a lot to prove. And it's funny because I put a thing out on Irish Sports Daily yesterday about, 6 players who kind of need to have a big spring. And I didn't list Lorenzo Styles. And some people said, he'd be my number 1. Like, he needs it. And I'm not saying that it would be very helpful if he did. But I almost think if he has a quiet spring where he just gets a little bit of confidence back, and you're just like, he wasn't like, he didn't look like he was going to be wide receiver 1. He was great, but like, he just caught the football well. That's all he did. He just caught the football well. Then I'm like, okay, well then now let's see what he does in the summer. And then you kind of go from there, because I also think he's just one of these guys that has that kind of different kind of speed there at the position and different ability after the catch. Like, his yak numbers, like, per reception, were fantastic. They were really, really good. He just didn't, get those opportunities late in the year and didn't catch a lot of balls, but they still were really good. So he's someone that can catch, one of those little, like, things to the flat, and all of a sudden he's taking it 40 yards to the crib, right? Like, he's got that ability. So he could just gain confidence just like that in ways that other people can't. Like, I mean, Deion Colsey is, I think, he's got to win in different ways than Lorenzo Styles can, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think, like, there's someone like Styles. I mean, it can just be one, like, it's going to be repetition with him in terms of, like, confidence in his hands, but it can just take, like, one play, like one slant, and he scores a 60-yard slant in practice. And then people are like, oh, that's Zoe. That's Lorenzo. That's the guy that, everybody thought he was going to be. And that's why even the coaches are like, I mean, maybe they even think like, I don't know if he's going to get to there. All of a sudden it reignites it, right? Like, and I think that kind of thing happens all the time in practice, whether it's, and it's not always something that we see all the time. But I remember, like, back in 2015, beginning of the season, like, Josh Adams, people were hyping Dexter Williams as the guy who was probably going to play as a freshman. And remember, that was like, they didn't have a lot of numbers there. It was like Procise and Torian Folston was supposed to be the guy. And then it was like the third back, probably Dexter Williams is how, like, people kind of saw it. And Josh Adams, just like one day, just a little draw play, 73 yards. And he like ran by Max Redfield. And you can say whatever you want about Max Redfield. You can't call him slow. And he ran by Max Redfield like he was standing still. And I think you could even see the coaches' faces. They were like, whoa. Like, and that's all of a sudden where you're just like, maybe we got to give this guy some more touches. Maybe we got to do this. Like, that can happen and that can flip. So that's why I think with, like, Lorenzo Styles, it's more about just, like, developing the little things and the little consistencies there, because all it'll take for him is just one or two plays, and then all of a sudden it's just like, we got to get this guy the ball. That's how it can work for a guy like that.
Yeah. And I think this is where Hartman could help him too. I think that is a big one where it's like, hey, like, I've got a quarterback now who I'm going to get the ball multiple times. I'm going to get multiple chances. I think that's important for him. Evan Olson says, sounds like the media might only get access to one practice. What's the most hype a recent player has received from one practice? And then Brandon answered the question for me. Kyle Hamilton picking Phil off 4 times in practice is the gold standard. Yeah. Kyle Hamilton's first ever practice in Notre Dame, he intercepted the ball. I think it was 3 times. Maybe it was 4. I don't know. I'll give him 4 because
Could have been 400. It felt like a million.
Yeah.
That certainly was a big one. I mean, I've been to practices where guys were just phenomenal. There was like one practice a couple years ago where Riley Mills was like unblockable. He was just, I was like, this guy is going, he's going to be something. And he's always shown flashes of that. He just has never put that together completely. And also too, that was, now that you think back on it, that was when Notre Dame was having serious problems with like Zeke Correll at guard and stuff. Like they were not whatever, and in context, whatever, but certainly he was really, really good in that one practice. I don't know, just from based off of one practice, like I think Hamilton is the one that kind of stands out. I mean, Claypool, he definitely had some practices where it was whatever, but it's different because he was like stacking these practices like that on top of each other prior to that 2019 season. I can't really think of anyone else off the top of my head that just like really, really just like jumped out. Like, I mean, Hamilton, to be a freshman and do that, and he was already like, came in as a super hyped prospect, a guy who was knew we're gonna play. But then it was just so, and because remember, like Alohi Gilman and Jalen Elliott were like established starters, and they were very good. They were very good, the previous year, and good that year too. But it was like, oh, they need to play Kyle Hamilton. Like they can't. Yeah. Like it was just undeniable. Also, probably like, I mean, that was definitely a stock down performance for Phil for going the other way. It was
I mean, it wasn't reported that way. It wasn't. I don't know that it was reported. I mean, I think people surmised after the fact. But after the fact, it was like Kyle Hamilton. It was just like the day everyone came out of the practice, and I'll remember it always because my phone blew up for no reason, and I was like, "Why do I have all these notifications?" And it was because Kyle picked off 3 passes or 4 passes in a practice. And I had asked, this is something I asked Troy Pride about. I've talked to him a couple times and he was on the show. I think the last time he was on the show, I asked him about that. Like not specifically about this practice, but just like freshmen coming in, like what is it to you guys? Like, how do you guys view that stuff? And he's like, honestly, we don't care. It's like, I could care less about freshmen. Like they don't really matter. It's like, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're 4-star, 5-star, whatever. It means nothing to me. But he was like, but Kyle came in first practice, pick out 3 passes. It's like, okay, like, I don't know who you are, but that's legit. Like, that's okay. And I don't know that there's ever been one practice like that. Now, granted, it's usually the case that the media sees multiple, so you don't need to have just one, right? I mean, that happened to be the first one for Kyle Hamilton, so that's the case for him.
The other thing is that like DBs and receivers get a chance to shine more in these practices because there's one-on-ones, there's 7-on-7, there's team, all of that. So like all of Kyle Hamilton's picks didn't come in team, like they were in 7-on-7, whatever. Like it was just throughout the practice, right? So that's kind of how it goes. And so a lot of times too, because it looked like me and Tyler James, who were like basically watching the O lineman, D lineman one-on-ones while everybody else is watching Skelly or whatever. But yeah, so a lot of people kind of miss some of that stuff. Yeah. So you don't like, you're not going to get hyped about as hyped about like, whoa, Khalid Kareem was dominant today or whatever, because people don't see that part of it as well. So I think that there is a little bit of bias, not for Kyle specifically there, but just in general for the DBs and like Julian Love, like where it was just like obvious. Like, I mean, I can't remember if it was at Culver or whatever. So he's another guy that he had a practice in his sophomore year, before he had like a million pass breakups that season, he had like another practice where it was just like, he is just on every route, like just every route. Like he was like, before the receiver was breaking, he was just like in the pocket of just the receiver every single time and making plays on the ball. I mean, he must have got his hands on the football. And that was another thing where it's one-on-ones and you're seeing it and all that too, right? So just add up. But he must have had like 15 pass breakups in a freaking practice. And like, you just don't see that very often.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish up the wide receivers with the early enrollees. Rico Flores, Jaden Greathouse, and Braylon James are on campus right now, and they're going to go through spring ball. And you know, Matt, I heard Matt ask Jaden Greathouse a question about the playbook, and he was like, you know, it's more than I expected. It's not that it's harder than I expected. It's just like it's more it was more voluminous than he expected, and I think to me, to me, the spring for those guys needs to be like, can you physically play at this level right now? Like, can you do it? I don't care about playbook. I don't care about knowing the playbook. I don't care. Like, are you someone that can physically compete at this level? And if yes, then we'll teach you. We'll teach you how to do it. We'll teach you the playbook. We'll go from there. But Notre Dame needs to find out if these guys can actually play and help them physically. If you can't do it physically, then it doesn't matter the playbook, in my opinion. It's because it's like if you can't be out there doing it, you can't. It doesn't matter, right? Like, just determine whether or not they can play as freshmen, and then go from there. I don't want to hear about playbook stuff too much. It just, to me, I don't want that to be a deterrent. And I don't know how much it has been in the past or whatever. I don't really want to relitigate that, but it's just like I don't want to hear about playbook stuff with those guys.
I mean, the perfect example of that, and sorry, EK, Westlake could beat a couple teams in ND schedule. No, they couldn't. This is like the Alabama beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. No, they couldn't. They're not all pros. They're not all pros on the college teams. They can't beat. They're not all scholarship guys on Westlake. Westlake's 240-pound guard is getting his lunch eaten by some guy in Stanford. That's just how it is, right? Like, but anyways, I do 100% agree with that. That's just like one of those things where, like Kevin Stepherson is the best example of that, where he was just so good individually that it was undeniable that they needed to get this guy on the field. And obviously he's like one of the greatest what if players for Notre Dame because of all his off the field troubles. But like, I think you look at it where, like he just went in and he was like dusting like Cole Luke in practice or whatever, right? Like, and you're like, well, Cole Luke just played against Clemson last year and was good. Like, that's just where you look at all these kind of things and you see someone like that. And that's why one-on-ones, that's why that kind of stuff, it does matter. It does matter. It might seem like it's like glorified or whatever, but that's where those young guys get a chance to shine. And that's where you knew like Kevin Austin, he had all this ability because he beat Julian Love like on a post route for like a deep ball post route. And you're like, I mean, Julian Love's an All-American and he just smoked him, right? Like it's all that kind of stuff does like matter. And that's why, so Greathouse, Flores, who I do think both of those two are guys that have a chance to play early based on like stuff you've seen from them, not just physically, but just understanding of like leverage in terms of how they're approaching a defensive back, all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, in saying that, Braylon James might just come out and literally jump over, Benjamin Morrison on one rep and like snag a deep ball, and then all of a sudden that could get someone's attention, right? Where they're doing that. So that's why this kind of stuff matters, because when you make plays like that, then all of a sudden they're like, okay, well now it becomes our priority to say like, we got to get this guy ready because he has this ability, right? And so it is on the player it is on the player, but if the player shows enough in those individual periods and whatnot, and it even before one-on-ones, like all these things of like just individual and just understanding like all these like drills and stuff that Chauncey Stuckey's going to be drilling into these guys, all that kind of stuff does matter. All that stuff is competing, because when you get into that, like you're going to be able to like determine whether or not like this guy can play or be close to playing. And then you say like, we got to get this guy ready. And sometimes it's too hard to get some of these guys ready, but it's got to be the coach's job to get these guys in certain situations. And you might not have anybody. So it also depends on like how they feel about the veterans on the thing, right? Because if they don't feel like this guy's not going to help us beat Ohio State, like to a veteran, well, then and a freshman could, then it changes how you view it.
All right, let's move on to running backs. Obviously, so the upperclassmen, you have Chris Tyree, Audric Estime, and Logan Diggs, who are all in Ireland at the moment. Hope they're having a good time. Just got a lot of stuff on the Twitter machine and IG on that. And then Jabron Payne is a redshirt freshman year. He's coming up. And then you have Jadarian Price, who, is coming off the Achilles injury. Really curious to see, what he's going to be able to do and how they want to work him in and that sort of thing. I don't know. I have actually two minds of this, right? Like, I feel like you don't really need to get, like, I feel like this is a big spring for Jabron Payne in terms of workload. It's like, I think of all of them, he probably needs the most work on, like, from an individual standpoint. Just because it's one of those things, again, we got to find out, like, Notre Dame has to find out if he can play at this level, like in a real way. Like, so guys are hurt. Can you come in and play? Like, can you give us good snaps, right? And look, Estime and Diggs, they're going to get a ton of work. They don't need a ton of work, right? In terms of just like inside running and that sort of thing. And the things that I would like to see them work on is just like pass pro. They were not good pass pro last year. Like, neither of them were very good at that. And that was a big weakness of theirs. Just working on that, working on like individual technique stuff, footwork, balance, that sort of thing. Like, I feel like that's their main focus this year, because we know they can perform in big games, right? We've seen it.
Yeah.
And then Chris Tyree's one where, what is his role going to be really? I mean, he might be one of the more important like upperclassmen players. Like for the spring, especially an incoming senior, springs are just kind of like, you know what? I've done the spring. I don't know, right? Like, it's just kind of like you're going through the motions. I think for him, I think this spring is pretty important. He needs what is his role going to be really, right? That needs to be figured out. It'll be very interesting to hear about like where he is and what he's doing and how he looks. Because right now it just seems like he's a guy that you want to have the ball, but how do we want to have him to have the ball is a big question. How do you see that playing out, Jamie?
Well, I think it's a big prove it spring for him. Yeah. Because no one on the staff that was there that recruited him that saw kind of like more of the, were there for, I mean, other than Marcus Freeman was on the staff, but he wasn't on the offensive staff, right?
Yeah.
Like when he took that kick back on the house against Wisconsin, right? These guys don't remember him scoring a 90-yard touchdown against whatever, scoring like having like multiple 40-yard runs when he was like a freshman or whatever, right? They don't remember a lot of this stuff. Even that Oklahoma State bowl game where he had like, I don't know, like 130 yards receiving or whatever it was. They don't remember that. Like, it's like they haven't seen as much of that. So it's kind of like I'd say it's like a pretty big prove it spring. Like he's got to do something. He's got to show like, hey, I am that guy. I can do this. And then that's where Parker's like, we got to find ways to get this guy the football. We got to be able to do this. And I know a lot of people, so like S-Rock said, sorry, I don't know if I think that's how he wants his name. S-Rock, he said Tyree needs to be a slot. And you hear that a lot. And I don't think he is a natural slot. I mean, I think he can line up there and do some things, but I think, Notre Dame probably like is better off with like Jaden Thomas in the slot, or Rico Flores, or maybe Lorenzo Styles or whatever, right? Like, so I don't know if even if he moves to the slot, like, I don't think he's the best slot on the team. So I don't see that kind of helping him that much. I don't know. Maybe if he moved there full time, that would be something that whatever. But and I think he does have pretty decent hands. But I don't know. I think I don't want to say he needs because Jadarian Price. I mean, I seriously doubt he'll do anything. Like he's going to run around. He's not going to do stuff with the team or whatever because it's been less than a year since he tore his Achilles. So he might be in uniform, but he's not going to be doing much. So I think it's almost like Tyree, even though he's the veteran and he can do certain things. He can do these things at a level. Like he's good in pass pro. I think he reads it pretty well. It's like he can play, but he almost kind of needs like a little bit of what like Jadarian Price did last year as an early enrollee. Like he needs like a couple of those kind of plays. Like he needs that something to like kind of gain the confidence of the coaches to kind of really like show like, hey, I like don't forget about me. Like don't forget about me because it's just so easy to get lost in the shuffle when you're like, okay, well, Diggs, we know Diggs is solid. We can do this. We know Estime is going to do this. Like, and then because if he doesn't, all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, Price is healthy. Well, I think he can probably do some of the stuff that Tyree does, but better. Or Jeremiah Love. Well, we don't know about him, but man, he can fly. We know he runs just like Tyree. He's like a bigger Tyree. He can run sub 4.4, right? So I think Chris Tyree, you're right. I think he needs a big spring.
And they need him to be like Dexter. Like Dexter was not like Chris Tyree to me doesn't have the best feet in the hole. It's like he doesn't, and he's not a big juke guy like Kyron Williams, right? Like he's just not going to put someone on skates like that. But Dexter didn't do that either. Dexter was a one cut, see it and go. And that's what Tyree needs. Now, to be clear, or to be fair, Dexter played in the system of Chip Long, where this field was more spread out, and so you didn't have as many people in a confined space. And that is where Chris Tyree like gets I don't want to say in trouble, but it's like
I do think that is a big thing.
Yeah, he gets through the line, and it's like, oh, there's someone else here, and I got to make a move, and that's just not where he excels. Because how many times has it been like one cut and I'm good? Like that's just not the case, right? And so to me, it's like that's what he needs. He needs the field spread out a little bit more, and it just needs to be able to make the one cut and go, and that's where he's going to be super effective. Like Dexter Williams in 2017, I think that would be a great outcome for Chris Tyree, honestly. I really do. Because Dexter was a very much a value add on that team. Now, granted, that it was mostly Josh Adams, right? And I don't think that he's going to get the carries to duplicate what, something that that Dexter did in 2018, but just that spot roll, right? Like it's like a 50, 60 carries where it's like, man, like 50, 60 carries for like 600 yards, right? Like Dexter was like 8.9 yards per carry or something like that, right? Like that's where he needs to be. I think, and those other guys will take over there.
This is the other part of it too, is that, I mean, if you look at what Tyree, if he's going to have any shot at playing in the NFL, I mean, look how valuable like check down running backs are in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like they're extremely valuable guys. Like Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey is essentially a check down running back. Like, yeah, he can do a little bit of stuff, but it's like, he's not the run between the tackles guy. That's not his thing.
Yeah.
So what makes him valuable is that like he can catch 100 balls and run a little bit too. Like that's basically why he's so valuable. So, I mean, it's ironic because I think Drew Pine was horrible at hitting the check down. So maybe that's something with like Hartman and Buchner and et cetera, like where he can really,
Yeah.
you know, kind of grow with that, because that's something where he should be able to thrive, and that's the way that he needs to show value. And not just, I think that could show value for the team, but also a value in maybe making the next level too.
Yeah, and Patrick Carter, 39 carries at 9.2 yards per carry in 2017 for Dexter. I think Tyree should get more than 39 carries, to be clear. But it seems like every time Dexter Williams got a chance in 2017, he hit, right? And I think, obviously not a lot of opportunities there. Patrick Carter also says, always miss the start of these. And that, my friends, is why you want to hit the notification bell so you know when we go live, right, Patrick? So you should do it right now. You should do it. It's a stated problem. You stated the problem. You miss the start, hit the notification bell, you know we're going live. All right, moving on. Tight ends, Jamie. Transition year for the tight end, right? Like, I think Notre Dame went from, Alize Mack to Cole Kmet to Michael Mayer. So, there was a client in the line of like obvious choices, like this is your next NFL tight end.
Yeah,
right?
There was always a next guy in line.
Yeah.
Although say Michael Mayer jumped the line.
Michael Mayer jumped the line, right, to Tommy Tremble's chagrin. But even Tommy Tremble, right, NFL guy, right? Brock Wright, NFL guy. So, but now there's not that obvious choice, right? I think we could have seen that if Eli Raridan had not gotten hurt, but he did. He got hurt, and now his spring status is going to be up in the air because he hurt the ACL again. Kevin Ballman had a knee injury, and Mitchell Evans came back from a knee injury second half of the season, and I thought performed well, but certainly not to the point where it's like, okay, we're definitely going to have him on the field all the time, right? I don't think we're ready to say that yet. And
we don't know if
he's
more than a 1B yet. He's got to kind of prove it.
And obviously Holden Stays as well. So for Mitchell Evans and Holden Stays, I think this is a big spring for them in terms of just like, hey, we're going to be a major part of this offense. Like, don't think that you're not going to be running 12 personnel just because Michael Mayer isn't here anymore, right? We're just as capable of doing that. And I think Holden Stays out of all of them. Big upside there. I'm having a hard time, like, even thinking about a comp for him, right? I'm trying to think of like someone recently with Notre Dame who has his kind of frame, who has his body type. I mean, almost like you almost have to go back to Derek Brown in terms of just the style of player. And obviously Derek Brown played in an era where it's like you caught 12 passes in a year and it's like the greatest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case, right? So
Notre Dame just first round tight ends, they throw the ball to 10 times.
Yeah. So that's a different time, but I just think the sky's the limit there. But big spring for those guys on that front, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to get all the reps. Like, I mean, David Sherwood is obviously going to get in there too, but David Sherwood is going to fill his role, and that's kind of what he's going to do. He's going to be that H-back, fullback type. I think little preview for Six Thoughts on Thursday. So I was going to write about Mitchell Evans. So he had the 14th best run block grade out of Power 5 tight ends last year. Michael Mayer third, by the way. And I mean, for a guy who was a high school quarterback a couple years ago, like, that's pretty good. And so I think he's going to be one of the best blocking tight ends in college football this year. I think would be surprised if he's not a top 5 blocking tight end. I thought he showed just incredible potential there. And now it's about kind of showing whether or not, like, he can be. I think he has, like, ability after the catch. He's a good athlete. It's like, can he be a guy who wins contested? Can he be like a guy that they can count on, like, over the middle, catch the ball in traffic, like all that kind of stuff? And with Stays has got really exciting receiving potential. And he's a guy that even last year in camp, like, made like a couple like really, really nice catches in red zone one-on-ones, where, definitely caught your eye. And I think, like, because like Kevin Bauman and Eli Raridan are out and won't be available, like, that just, it may be a different conversation where Stays maybe gets lost in six, but now he could really, like, if you were like at the end of spring, Stays could be the guy that people are hyping up to be the starter.
Yeah,
He has that chance now,
yeah,
right? So
he does.
And it's not to say like I think like Eli Reardon's like potential. So I think with Bauman, I mean, you just don't know what that's helped, right? And who knows? Like, and also too, like I kind of think like Mitchell Evans kind of took what Bauman did and did it better. So I don't know it like exactly where Bauman's going to be. Speaking of a guy, he was a guy who had one just phenomenal dominant practice where everybody just thought it was Michael Mayer, and they were like, "Oh no, that's Bauman who made that catch." Like he had one of those days in practice one day. So, I mean, he's got ability. Like, I mean, they're loaded at tight end, and that's just the thing where, which I mean, I get why Kane Barong went somewhere else, but if he would have stayed, he would have had a lot of chances to kind of add like a big spring and kind of make a difference. And I think Parker liked him as a player too. So that would have been interesting. But yeah, I mean, the other thing is the tight end coach is now the offense coordinator. That's usually a pretty good thing for tight ends too. So, I mean, these guys will get their chance. I don't expect they're not going to go heavy 12 personnel like I expect them to do later in the actual season because they just can't wear those guys out. So you're going to see probably a ton of 11, which is good for the receivers. Maybe even some 21 too. But I do think that, like, yeah, I mean, Holden Stays is exactly the kind of guy who, you know, you got these injuries. It's a perfect chance for him to make a big jump. Unfortunately, it's like you almost wish he was like there another year because it's still like it's hard to make that jump, and we'll see. Yep.
All right. Let's end it, Jamie, with the offensive line. Everyone's favorite group. War Daddies, right? So you've got Joe Alt, left tackle, Blake Fisher, right tackle. They're both going to be on All-American lists. Zeke Correll might have a chance at center to be on All-American lists. And then the two guard spots, which are completely open. And obviously that's going to be very closely watched by, people within the, on the beat, fans, all that other stuff. That's gonna be a very hotly contested battle. But I think the two tackle spots the backup tackle spots is a very underrated position because Joe Alt, I think everyone assumes that he'll be gone. I think there's an excellent chance that Blake Fisher will be gone, right? And so who's going to be the next in line there, right? What is Tosh Baker? This is the time. I mean, if there was ever a time, this is the time for Tosh Baker. And honestly, there's a chance that he has a good spring and says, you know what, I can start somewhere. I'm going to go do that. Right. I don't, it's hard for me. It would be hard for me to see him sticking around beyond spring just because of the opportunity piece. But who knows, right? I'm not going to speak for him. I haven't heard anything about that. It just seems like he's a guy who would try to move on there. But let's say he doesn't, right? Like this is a big spring for him. New offensive line coach, Emil Wagner. I think you're very high on him. How much does he weigh? Right?
What does he weigh exactly?
Is he like if he's 290 or something? Then I'm actually like super encouraged by that. If he's up to 290, because then it's like okay,
all aboard the Wagner hype train. If he's 290 right now,
yeah. So that's super important, right? And then moving forward, what is Ty Chan? What's he gonna play? Right? Most people think guard. Does he have the ability to play tackle? Right? Michael Carmody. How much do you weigh? Right? Like, are you up in that 290, 300 pounds? Right? Because you can't compete.
He's got to be 300. I mean,
So where is he at? What position is he going to play out there? Right? So that's important for him, and obviously the guard spots. I mean, Caleb Johnson's another swing guy. Can you be a tackle? Do you want to be a tackle? Do you want to be an Notre Dame football player? Like these are all things that need to get sorted out this spring. At the guard spots, you have, a number of options, right? So you have Kristofic, who started. I think it's funny how everyone just kind of assumes that Billy Strauss is going to be one of the starters at guard.
Yeah.
And I'm totally fine with that, right? Like, look, and it's frankly all based on the words of what can I think of the lineman's name? Howard Cross. Howard Cross made a comment. He has strong hands. He has great hands. It's like, okay, Billy Strauss, All-American. It was simmering, but it was like, okay, Howard Cross said it, All-American status for Billy Strauss there. So there's him, Rocco Spindler. Now is the time. It is time. If there was ever a time, it is now. I mentioned Carmody before, Ashton Craig, Pat Coogan, right? Tons of guys, right? So these are the people. Ty Chan again. Like, do you want to be a guard, right? So this is who is competing for the spots there, and it could. All I can say, I think, and I'll send it to you in a second, but I think the people who have the leg up at this point are certainly Andrew Kristofic, and I have to say, Billy Strauss. If I had to guess today, it would be Kristofic and Strauss. I mean, where are you at with this, Jamie?
I think that would probably be my guess today too. Okay, this is the one thing about and kind of bringing it back to the Carmody conversation about him, like, shocking that he doesn't weigh more, and that, like, I mean, I don't want to I don't like calling guys out or anything like that, but, like, unless he had mono or something, like, I don't know why he is weighing 280 pounds, like, because playing that big, it takes, I mean, I'm someone that when I was in college, like, I had to put in a lot of effort to get big. Like, I had to be drinking, like, protein shakes at midnight and whatever, right? Like, and that's something that you got to do. And as, like, a college football player, like, that's something you got to do. And so where is he at? And that was the big thing to me, because if you looked at him and say, like, Andrew Kristofic, and we're kind of like Andrew Kristofic, and this is why I think Andrew Kristofic, like, I would be shocked if he doesn't play, because, like, even last year, I just remember seeing him in August, and I was like, man, Kristofic, he is so much bigger. This guy has put in work. He has put in a lot of work to get bigger, because he does not have a monster frame. He does not. He has to, like, actively work to get bigger, right? So I think that's something where I just think he's put in the work. I heard everything good about that. He's probably going to be the guy there. So I think that there, and then it kind of opens up the right guard spot. And like you said, everything I heard about Billy Strauss has been positive. I will say that Ashton Craig, I can't remember if you mentioned him or not, but, like, he is someone who is definitely, like, I've heard a lot of positive buzz about him, like, about whether he's the center of the future, the guy after Carell, and maybe the backup center. Maybe he's the guy who jumps Pat Coogan for that spot, but also a guy who could probably compete at guard too, right? Remember, he's the guy who played tackle in high school. You know, came from a small school in Indiana, but, like, he's a really good athlete. He's a really, really good athlete, and he's got a bigger frame. He's, like, more built like a Martin brother, the center, Nick Martin. He's built more like Nick Martin, right? Like, in terms of, like, his just frame and size. So, like, he's going to be like he's a taller guy in the interior. He's not like one of these squatty guys. So I think, you know, it's going to be interesting to kind of see what happens there. I think, you know, Rocco Spindler, it's kind of like, we got to see it. You got to see it, and you got to see it, and you got to see him kind of, like, making that progress. And him and, like, Tosh Baker are in that same kind of category where you have to see it. But I mean, to me, obviously the guard spots are going to be whatever, but it's like, who is the next guy in the interior, and who's the next guy in at tackle? And those things, those matter, because really, when it comes down to it, you want to have 7-8 guys.
Yeah.
You want to have 7-8 guys that you can count on. So who's going to be 6 and 7, maybe 8, right? Like, who's that going to be? And that'll be, like, you know, what's really kind of interesting to see, and there's always something too. The earlier they can kind of figure out who the best 5 are, and then you get it set from there, and then you kind of just get to where you're at. So I mean, you can't mention it. Joe Rudolph, he's going to identify the best 5. I mean, that's what Harry Ethan did too. He would always do that and pick it out that way. That's why there was like guys who played tackle that could. The problem is that Notre Dame previously, and you could say like this is definitely something it's probably you know, I know you're praising Jeff Quinn for a lot of things. He gets a lot of heat for something. I think overall Notre Dame didn't recruit enough tackles.
Yeah,
like they didn't. So they don't. That's why the third tackle, where it's like, man, I really hope Baker does it, or I really hope Emil Wagner's put on the way, because they didn't land enough guys. Because that's the thing. If you land enough these other tackles, when people are always ready to just throw Blake Fisher at guard, and it's like, no, you need him at tackle. You can't put him just at guard. Like, so until that happens, like, you know, you get enough there, and that's why like next year could be a question at tackle, because that's just where you're at, and that's why more than anything too, you need a Baker, a Wagner, a Chan, whatever, to really step forward.
Yeah, only 2 in the Baker, the Baker, what's his name, a Carmody class, and like that. And if they're both misses, you know, you're essentially taking 0, right? So that's problematic there for sure. And Justin Knox mentioned Carmody's brother hit the portal from the basketball team. Robbie Carmody, he hit the portal as well, so he's going to be out of school. I don't know how much it should matter to Michael, because they probably won't go to the same school for wherever Michael goes or Robbie goes. So I don't know.
I'm pretty
that
sure Robbie
matter.
is got his degree and stuff too. Like I think it's. I don't think that would be related to like Michael wanting out. I mean, who knows? He might, if he's not in the mix or whatever. But
where are you going to go and play 280? You know, he's
not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, if you're not going to get weight, that's the problem. I mean, that's the problem. It's not talent. You're not big enough, man. You can't be a tight end out there. So that's the deal. All right, guys, we're gonna end it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. That was a lot of fun. I love talking about the football team. It's the best. It's the best. So we'll be talking about the defense tomorrow, and we'll go into that. We'll get on our regular schedule, and then we'll be back on our regular schedule next week. Hopefully, barring any sort of illnesses or anything like that. So thank you everyone for tuning in. As always, if this is your first time listening to the show, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the show, like our friend earlier in the show. So check us out there. Check us out on our podcast feeds. We're going live there once again. So the link in the description below. So check it out. We'll be back tomorrow, and everyone else have a good rest of the day.